Hi, I'm Santeham, and this is a Santeham gaming review. The game I shall be reviewing today is called Clockwork Empires. I was originally supposed to be doing a Let's Play game series on this called What the Hell Is This Gaming?
You're lying!
I'm really not. I even produced a game trailer for it and everything. I was going to go into the game completely blind and invite you guys along for the ride. It was supposed to be a series that kicked off content from a channel, but I soon came to realise this game is slow. How slow? Very slow. But I'm getting off subject, so let's get back to the review. This game looks to have so much potential. If you haven't yet watched the trailer, I suggest you do so now. Well, after you finish watching this video. You can find it on Steam if you search for the game, or alternatively, you can find it on the original trailer that I did for this game. The ideas that it shows and the direction that the game developers seem to want to take this game in have the potential to be at the very least interesting, possibly even fantastic. But the current execution of what the game is as a whole right now just seems somewhat lacking. Like I said, the game is slow, it's poorly paced with everything taking an aggravating amount of time to complete. That is, of course, except for the tutorial, which puts you under pressure right from the start. At the very start of the game, you choose your starting location on an island. Most of the locations are locked off, so your choice is pretty limited. But that's fine, since the only unlocked spaces on the map are the easy areas with plenty of resources. You unlock new areas by getting a certain number of population in your settlement. That part's fine, it gives me something to aim for and possibly a harder challenge in the future if I want it. The problem comes as soon as you start. You're given an airdrop of food rations and immediately thrust into the tutorial. But the tutorial is not set in a separate area from the rest of the game. The game doesn't say, okay, let's start you off in this safe little area while you learn the basics of the game, and then, once you know what you're doing, okay, now it's time to start the game properly. No, instead, everything that's happening during the tutorial is permanent within your settlement. This means your villagers will be eating the good food, the stuff that helps them stay healthy and happy, whilst you're fiddling around, learning the basic mechanics of the game. The end result is that by the time you've actually figured out what the hell you're doing and what all the buttons do, and how the game operates, your villagers will have eaten all of the good cooked food, and will now be resorting to eating berries and raw food like fungus. This then sends them into despair or maddens them, meaning they'll do less work and be less productive, starting you off with a huge disadvantage. If your villagers get maddened or despair, they mostly refuse to do any work and instead charge around the map like headless chickens. This then adds to the growing problem, because if the villager was, let's say, assigned to the kitchen or the fields where they grow the food, and then they refuse to work, that means that other villagers will go unfed, which then adds to the problem. The whole system seems overly harsh at the start of the game. Even when the fields and kitchen were running at full capacity, they still struggled to keep up with demand. I seem to have an abundance of crops left in baskets on the field that were never being hauled to the kitchen or the storage. You might think the simple answer to this would be to just create a second kitchen, but then that creates more problems than it solves. You only have a few people spread around each building, and you can only have a limited number of buildings related to your overall population. This means at the start of the game, having 2 kitchens and a crop field all fully manned takes up a lot of both your population and your building limit. Talking about buildings and manning them, Clockwork Empires goes down a slightly different route to other similar games like The Settlers or Banished, by having your population split into 2, possibly 3 later in the game, classes. You have your overseers, whom you assign one at a time to each building. These are essentially the skilled labourers, and they have their own stats that can be raised by doing certain jobs repeatedly. You then have lowly workers, who are simply assigned to an overseer to help speed up whatever task the overseer is currently set to. You recruit new villagers by setting up new housing associated with that type of villager and then have them sent to you from your government. So, if you only set up low class housing, you will only attract workers, whereas if you set up middle class housing, you can attract additional overseers. I do like the way you're able to customise the layout, size, shape and interior decorations of each house, making each one you place down feel unique. Even better than the interior decoration of each house can increase the appeal to its residents and improve their mood. That's a nice touch. But I do wish you were able to toggle an exterior view of each house or building, so you could take a breath from time to time and just ogle how beautiful the settlement you're working on actually is. Having different buildings with different exteriors and different shapes would make the whole experience seem a little more personal and do something that other games in this genre just don't do. Whilst I'm talking about cosmetics, I'd like to take a moment to mention the overall style of the game, and very specifically the character models, because, and let's be honest here, they look like ass. The environment textures look very similar to those used in Banished or the Settlers, which is no bad thing. The animals that roam the forest seem mystical but well drawn, and even the fish people don't actually appear to be out of place. And yet, to me at least, the game just doesn't look quite right. I'm sure it comes down to the character models, because let's be honest, the developers were obviously going for a realistic look, but balls it up. The characters look hideous at best, even slightly terrifying at worst. I will give it to them, they're giving each overseer a unique personality with their own likes and dislikes, character traits and moods is a nice touch. And the fact that they can form personal friendships and relationships with other characters again shows the potential that this game has. However, whether it's because the changes were too subtle to notice or just didn't stick with the game long enough to really see the consequences, these traits and relationships never seem to have any meaningful impact on the gameplay. It's also kind of hard to like a character that you've had from the start when the game tells you it's determined to kill him off. Every now and again you'll get a timed event pop up telling you that there's something that requires your personal attention. You have a timer counting down in which you have to respond to make a decision about something going on within the colony. This may be settling a dispute between two of your villagers or telling someone whether to listen to a message they believe they may have received in a dream. But again, this whole system just seems hollow and a wasted opportunity to affect real consequences that your village would have to live with. As an example, I had two villagers have dreams where they thought they were being sent messages. I told one to pursue the messages and listen in future dreams, whilst the other I told to ignore the dreams completely. I never seemed to have any real consequences either way, making me wonder if there was ever any point to reacting to the timed event in the first place. The only exception I found was when you first encountered the fishmen. You were asked whether to stay peaceful with them or kill them on sight. Since I'd seen the damage dealing potential of these guys in the trailer and already had my hands full with bandit raids, oh yeah, that's the thing, bandits. I decided to stay peaceful and adopt a live and let live policy, which was fine. Sometimes fish people would wander through my village and occasionally harass or scare a villager, but for the most part I left them alone and they left me alone. But again, why not have them as a potential ally against bandits or a trading partner if you choose not to fight them? It seems the default setting for the fish people is at war with them or not at war with them. Again, it's so much wasted potential. Do you see a running theme here? This game has heaps of potential, but right now it's just not being utilised. Another thing are world events that pop up from time to time. They tell you about something going on within the Empire and usually end with, and your relationship with faction X has slightly increased. That's great, but they seem to pop up a lot. Almost always say the same things, and I found myself just clicking them off without reading them most of the time, because they just feel obtrusive. Talking of obtrusive pop-ups, this screen pops up at least every 10 minutes and pauses the game in an awkward, carry on making things seem like they're moving when they're not animation. Of course, you need to have the game auto-save for you, since you will likely experience frequent crashes and bugs. In the first hour of gameplay alone, the game crashed at least 3 times, and while it settled down a little after that, I still experienced a crash at least once an hour. I haven't even mentioned the bugs and gameplay glitches yet, to which there are more than a few. You'll experience your first one while playing through the tutorial, and this one threw me for a while. As you start getting message pop-ups on the right hand side of the screen, such as, oh I don't know, the tutorial, the buttons used for building etc. on the bottom left side of the screen will get bumped down, lower and lower and lower, until they can't be accessed at all. The only way to combat this is to close the pop-ups on the right side of the screen, but again, that's the tutorial. So you better be able to take on all the information it's telling you in one go and remember the objectives it wants you to complete, because otherwise you won't be able to access the buttons required to, complete the tutorial. When a game screws up giving you its own tutorial, you know you're in for a bumpy ride, and you have to wonder how this got past the devs. I mean, surely they play tested their own tutorial sequence at least once before rolling it out. Of course, there are other bugs, like this one of the lady levitating a pot of stew, then demonstrating she has the table manners of a zoo animal. Or how about villagers just leaving things all over the place? There are stockpiles available and free villagers without any tasks being set, and yet everywhere you look, important game items like food ingredients are just strewn about the place. This fishman has been stood here for over a week now, shouting at, well, nobody. And the animation just loops over and over and over again, night and day. And talking of an animation looping over and over and over again, night and day, what about this lady who seems incapable of just using a bed? And I know it's not actually a bug, but the walking animation just looks so awkward and clumsy. Hey, let's check in on our fishman and bed lady. Yeah, they're still going. Here's another thing that's just not acceptable in this day and age. The game can only be played in these two resolutions. Not being able to display in 1920 by 1080 is outright frustrating and just shows a lack of polish for this game before release. And since I'm on a roll, I'm going to keep going. Your villagers are slow. You practically have to play the game on 2x speed, and even then your people seem to dawdle around at a snail's pace. I mentioned that progress in this game was slow. Well, this is a big part of it. Having a 5x speed button might actually speed up the game's pacing. Other small gripes with the game include having other factions included but not being told who they are or how your relationship with them might affect your game. And when you place down a blueprint but don't have the materials to produce it, give me some written indication of A, what the material is, and B, where stroke how I'll produce it. It's no good the game just showing me an icon of, well, something in low resolution that I've never seen before and saying, hey, you need that, tell me what it is and tell me what I need. I started playing this game at around 5 PM and ended up playing it until 3 AM. And this is what I had to show for all that time. This is why I can do a let's play that was worth a damn. I would have ended up with a 50 episode series, all of which would have been as interesting to view as watching paint dry. I ended up in a weird catch-22 situation. Bandits attacked my camp and must have used a grenade launcher, yeah, they're in the game, which insta-killed 8 of my people. That then lowered my standing by 5 points per death with the people I get new colonists from, who then refused to send me any new colonists until I'd repaired my standing with them. The trouble was, in order to repair my standing, I would have had to build a foreign office. But I couldn't do that because since some of the overseers had died, I'd hit my limit of buildings. I couldn't increase my limit of buildings until I got more overseers. I had the capacity for more, but they wouldn't send me any until my reputation had been increased, which I needed the foreign office for, so, well, you get the idea. In truth, I probably could have sorted out by demolishing some buildings, then rebuilding them later, but by this point I was kind of burnt out by the whole game, and the whole process seemed somewhat contrived and unnecessary. Throughout the whole experience, I couldn't help but draw comparisons with other games within the genre that I've loved playing in the past. I've already mentioned the two big ones in this review, Banished and Settlers, but that's natural because this game feels like it's trying to bridge the gap between the two of them. It has more resource gathering opportunities and building options than The Settlers, and with objectives to shoot for such as unlocking new areas to play in and dealing with things like the occult and the occult hunter, which I didn't get to experience in this playthrough, it feels like it has a lot more of an end game than Banished. The problem is, at the time of this review, this game is a jack of both trades and a master of none. It has neither the focus nor the polish of either of those two games, and will just get overshadowed by both. The game is just out of early access, being released literally in the past few days, and that for me is its problem. I could forgive it of many, if not all of its shortcomings, if it was still under development. It seems like the problem with games being shoved out the door too early and without enough development and polish, with this sort of blasé attitude of, well, we'll just fix it later. It's not restricted to the big AAA developers and titles. This game is not ready for release yet, but since the developer says it is, I shall have to reflect that in my score. Right now, it gets a 4 out of 10. I might have given it a 5 or even a 6 with a watch this title had it stayed early access, But the one takeaway from all of this, and I've said it before in this review, and I'll say it again now, is it has potential. I really hope the developers keep working on this, because I know I'll be keeping an eye on it. And I'd really like to be able to come back in a couple of years' time and re-review it, and end up giving it the score that I think it's capable of getting. In the meantime, please don't forget to subscribe, and thank you for watching a Santeham gaming video.